Hello everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Pretty Lonesome. We're back in the garage today. That if you didn't see my latest YouTube video, because I post those now, I'm renovating it. Renovating is a very generous term. I'm putting a couch in here and then reorganizing it, making it nice, clearing out the landlord's clutter. I'm excited for this week's episode. I have a lot for you. There's been research that's gone into this week's episode. But before I start, and I don't know if the podcast is the place for this, but it feels right today. This morning, I lost my grandma. That's all it took. Oh, that's disgusting. It's not disgusting. We're pro-emotions here. Anyway, I just wanted to take a second before... Bitch, what the fuck? Sorry, it literally happened this morning, okay? And I have deadlines, that's why I'm filming this in such an emotional state, okay? Can't let good research go to waste. Anyway, they're using power tools out there. I hope you can't hear it. Doesn't seem like it's picking up on the microphone, but it might be. Let me point this upwards. So I just wanted to take a second, dedicate a part of the podcast to her, which maybe is weird because none of you know her, but it felt right. A diva like her deserves, I don't know, have her name spoken, I guess, a little bit longer. So I'll keep it brief, but I just was thinking about it today. She was such a huge influence for me. She wore bright red lipstick every day of her life, rain or shine, inside the house, outside the house, whether she was seeing someone or not. She wore necklaces, and I don't know where she got them from. I think the local market of where she lived, but I'm not kidding when I tell you this lady she had to install extra hooks on all her doors just to hang the amount of necklaces that she has, and she would wear them every single day, and they were honestly kind of fucking ugly, but she loved them. They were these big wooden chunky almost like pasta necklaces, but worse, and she insisted on them, and she has so many of them, and I'm going to get my mum to bring some with her so that I can keep some and wear some in her honor. Because honestly, maybe she had a vision that I just don't see, you know? She was a diva her whole life. And I inherited so much of my brain chemistry from her. There's so much of myself that I see in her. I definitely identify with my maternal line, my maternal ancestors really closely, whereas my male ones, my dad's side of the family, I don't know, but it's always that way, I feel. Well, not always, I just feel like I hear it more of I don't know about my dad's side of the family, but I love my mum's. My mum's side of the family is fucking insane. All of us. Completely insane. My grandma, no exception. Actually, there's a certain way I think that women in my family are. Growing up, I always kind of felt like a bit of an outsider in the world because I had certain issues in my head. And when I grew up, I kind of thought, I wonder what my grandma's been through in her life. I wonder if she ever struggled with mental illness, and started looking at my mum's life and my grandma's life, and I started to ask her questions, and I started to ask my mum questions, and it turns out this shit's blood deep. And it brought me a lot of comfort, actually, because she was someone that I always admired. And I remember when I was little, she visited London once, and her husband stayed in a hotel. I don't even know where it was. And I remember everything from that trip. I think I was 5. And I remember feeding the pigeons outside her hotel. I remember the smell of the hotel. I remember the hotel room. I remember where it was. I remember the street outside, the pebbles, the bench, the people I met, everything. And I genuinely think that trip somehow solidified for me that I didn't know how, I didn't know why, or I didn't know when, but I wanted to grow up to be the kind of woman that she was, which in my 5-year-old perception was just really cool and independent and stays in hotels. I don't know. It was just the whole essence of, I think if you know what I'm talking about, then you get the vibe. But it's this whole essence that she had that trip. And this person that she kind of became to me was honestly formed a lot of, not career aspirations, but it's now when I find myself in hotel rooms and traveling for work and being, just young and happy, I get excited because I feel like her on that trip. That's how I viewed her on that trip. And so I always feel like I embody her in those moments, and it makes me very happy. It's kind of I feel like my own idol. That's weird. But she formed a huge part of who I am, not just genetically, because that's a big component, but psychologically, emotionally, mentally. I always admired her. I always learnt from her. I always looked to her. I wanted to celebrate good things with her. There's few people in my life that I think to celebrate with when something good happens, or think to show accomplishments to, and I didn't do it as much as I should have, or as much as I got the urge to, but she was always one of those people for me. Anyway, she taught me a lot, more than she knows about just how to exist in the world, I think. Just observing her, and I never got to observe her that closely. From hearing stories and from the times I did get to see her and from the experiences we did share and the phone calls we had and the texts and the stories that I heard of her, just kind of the way she existed. And mind you, she existed with no ease in the world. She really didn't. No ease at all. She was a diva, like truly. I don't know where she spent many of her years, and I don't know how she spent many of them feeling. I just know there were hard periods for her and bad periods and then better ones. But she was a mystique woman to me. She was like an oracle almost. And she birthed insane babies, one of whom is my mother, one of whom is my auntie, and one of whom is my uncle. All three of them are insane. And all like accumulatively, like what, 6 of their children, aka me, my sister, my cousins, also insane. I don't know what the fuck is in the blood, because it's definitely that bloodline, because we're all insane in the same way, and then obviously all of us have different fathers, you know? So it's easy to track the source, and it's her. So yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if I'll keep that in the podcast. I just wanted to like appreciate her for a sec, since I have a platform, and since she is one of the biggest reasons I have it. Like, I mean, the biggest reason is obviously like my mother, the woman who raised me. But if my grandma didn't put the drops of insanity into our bloodline and drive everyone crazy for her entire existence, then I probably wouldn't have any of the insight that I have, and I probably wouldn't have the courage to come on a camera and speak my mind. I think if I got any of my articulation skills, it would have been from her and my mother. My mom was gonna kill me. My mother and my grandmother, same person. I mean, my mum likes to think that they're not that similar, but contrary to her belief, they are fucking identical. Anyway, it wouldn't have felt right to podcast today, I think, without just putting out some love and appreciation to who she was as a person, and who she was as a grandmother, and who she was as a mother, and who she was as just her existence on the earth will be greatly missed by me, and obviously everyone else in my family. She was a very impactful person. I think that's the best word for her, is like, if you knew her, you knew her. She didn't ever exist quietly. I get that from her. I would like to think I at least got a portion of it. Okay. Well, that took way longer than I thought. Fucking hell. Okay, moving on. You wanna know what the fuck I'm gonna talk about in today's episode? If we're all not too depressed to talk about it. So I know that I said that I would have read Steiner's work before this week's podcast episode, but I didn't. No one's surprised. So I know no more about Steiner than I did last week, which my knowledge was minimal. So, and plus, it's not that I wasn't interested. It's just that there's more interesting things to read. So I'm gonna start by pulling something up. I've been reading a book called Mistakes Were Made But Not By Me by Carol Tavris and Elliot Aronson, who are 2 psychologists, I believe. I'm only a few chapters in. I can't speak to the whole book, but so far, the most interesting thing that I have drawn from the book so far is they started to talk about cognitive dissonance. So I feel like this segues on from last week, where if you remember, if you listened, last week I was talking about discernment. I was talking about it in the context of I'd been fooled by some intentional propaganda on my TikTok For You page, and it was upsetting to me, and I was freaking out about how it scares me to not know the own truth inside of my head. When I started to listen to this and they got onto the topic of cognitive dissonance, it helped me understand why I was so afraid of not understanding propaganda when it's propaganda, or not judging it properly, or just in a general sense, apart from propaganda, apart from anything political, the fear of not knowing the truth inside my own head, whether that's my judgment on a person being wrong, or my judgment on a situation being wrong, or my knowledge on myself being wrong. Like, a big anxiety for me is like thinking I'm lying to my therapist unintentionally. Intentionally is fine, but unintentionally scares me, because I'm like, what if I'm getting this shit wrong? What if I'm not accurately portraying myself to my therapist, and I'm lying and I'm manipulating them, and it's all part of my evil master plan to do what? No one knows. But I kind of thought that was a me thing, being so deathly afraid of being wrong inside of my own head without the knowledge of being wrong. So that's why this chapter on cognitive dissonance really interested me. Okay, so to start out, what is cognitive dissonance, just in case you're unaware? Sorry about the lighting changing, by the way. I am in a garage, so the sun is moving. So, cognitive dissonance is tension that occurs when a person holds 2 ideas that are inconsistent. An example of this is smoking is bad for me and it will kill me, versus the idea that I smoke a pack a day. So if a person holds both of these beliefs, they know that it's bad for them, but they also know that they smoke, it can create cognitive dissonance. So then this cognitive dissonance can become a big problem. If they try and fail to quit, for example, because they've tried, because they know smoking is bad, but they failed to quit, then they will try and justify the smoking to themselves. Like, it's not really that harmful for me, or it stops me gaining weight, which is also harmful for me in their opinion, whatever it might be. And one of the quotes that struck me from this book was this. Albert Camus said, according to the book, "We spend our lives trying to convince ourselves that our existence are not absurd." And that struck me because I was like, maybe that's the better way to word my fear of being wrong, is that my existence is not absurd. I don't do things that are crazy or wrong, or I guess absurd is the right word. Like, I'm not just walking around making stakes being meaningless. I'm constantly applying meaning to everything. Even when I know something isn't right, or something isn't productive, or something isn't good for me, I still do it. So then they start talking about the idea that when people go through hardship and obtain something at the end of it, they will see what they obtained as inherently more valuable to them, and more valuable in general to others, to everyone, as just having higher value than if they got that same thing in an easy way. And I was thinking, I was like, is this true? Like, do I feel like that? Fucking definitely. You know what I was thinking about the other day, kind of off topic, but I was thinking about how I kind of want to go back to therapy for like a couple of problems I've been having. And then I was like, but I don't want to go to therapy because they're going to challenge my ideas. And then I was like, okay, so when I go to therapy, I think I'm going to need to tell them that I've built this really strong protective web around myself. And I noticed it just recently. It's like barbed wire around myself. And what I mean by that is I've come up with almost taglines to describe my emotions and my theories that I've confirmed towards why I do and feel certain things, especially when I fear that those things won't be outwardly validated. So, for example, let's say someone treated me badly. I know they treated me badly and I'm hurt by it, and it's had X, Y, and Z effect on me as a person. I develop almost like thought-ending prophecies of like, this happened to me, I felt this way, now I act this way, and I recognize that it's right or wrong, or that I'm working on it, or that I'm not, or that it's a time thing, whatever it is. Once I reach the point of having that structure in place, that like knowledge of like what happened, how did it make me feel, and how do I act now because of it, I kind of stop thinking about it after that point. It's like I'm like, got it, tick, add it to the list, and I don't dwell on it much more. It kind of becomes part of me. That's a problem. The reason I think I do that is because I'm scared that someone else is going to be like, well, did you ever consider that you were wrong? Or did you ever consider that you're a dick? Or did you ever consider they're the victim? Any of those things that scare me, that may not be valid, but they scare me, that maybe I'm perceiving this situation wrong, or maybe I'm secretly deeply evil. Maybe there's no reason for me to be as hurt as I am over this situation, and maybe there's no excuse for my behavior that came out of it. And I don't really think there's ever an excuse for bad behavior, by the way, but it's like all these things that I want to protect against because they scare me, the potential pain that those thoughts could cause scare me. So I put up this barbed wire, which is like cause, effect, behavior, and I leave it be. And I was thinking that if I go back to therapy, which I want to, I'm kind of going to have to acknowledge that and say to the therapist, like, I'm going to be defensive. If you give me new thoughts, it's going to be hard for me to let go of some of the reasonings that I've come up with because I came up with them alone and I dealt with the hardship alone, and I don't want them to be threatened, but I do at the same time because that's how you grow. And if there's a new way to look at something, I want to look at it that way. And if I'm right in my perspectives and my feelings, then let's work through them. That's also why I'm here, but I'm also here to have new perspectives put in front of me if that's what it calls for. So I realized that I have a little bit of cognitive dissonance going on myself, and that if I go to therapy, it's going to have to be something that I state, because it's also something I have to work through. And I think the reason I think it's cognitive dissonance is it's because like I went through so much pain, like they just said, how pain makes the outcome more valuable. I went through a lot of pain to come to my conclusion and to come to my place of peace. For someone to challenge the ideas that I have now about contexts and situations and myself as a person is difficult because I acquired them through so much hardship and pain. And I don't want to be wrong. Otherwise, what was the fucking pain for? And it makes me feel crazy and it makes me feel afraid. And so I double down on points. And they spoke about it in this book, is that people who have gone through something and achieved a thing or developed a viewpoint, when someone presents them with evidence that their viewpoint is wrong, contrary to what would be logical, they do not heed to the new information. They are more likely to see it as biased or wrong or discredit it entirely. And similarly, I am more likely to do that with people with different perspectives when it comes to certain pain that I've experienced, because I don't want to think about losing that thing that I suffered for. Does it have any more value than anything else? No. And my sole experience on earth, my sole job, I feel, is to just acquire knowledge and acquire information and learn and be open to new information all the time. It's against my nature to close off to that in some kind of self-protective mission. But it's what I do. It's what everyone does. It's human psychology, and it's very interesting. So more on that, right? They also made the point that they gave the example in the book of if you went to go join a book club, and on your way through the door, a flower pot fell and smashed over your head, and then you walked through the door with a sore head and joined the book club, that book club wouldn't become more appealing to you now than it would have if that pot didn't fall on your head, because it's not the experience of pain or embarrassment or hardship that we're drawn to as humans. It's just that we may apply more value to a thing that we obtained through pain as being more important. And they did a study where they hooked people up to an MRI. You don't hook someone up to an MRI, you put them in an MRI, I think. They put the participants through a cognitive dissonance experience, tailored obviously to the person in the MRI. And what they saw was the reasoning area of the brain shut off. Lights went off. The emotional part of the brain lit up when consonants. Dissonance and then consonance is the nicer one. And the emotional part lit up happily when consonance was restored. So that's crazy. Like, there's real physical brain shit behind this. It's not just like a flaw of people. It's hardwired into us. And it makes sense because people want to believe that they're right. People want to feel safe. They want to feel that they understand the world, and it's hardwired. And of course that's hardwired into us. I mean, it's stupid. It's really stupid because we should always be logical. You'd think humans were always logical, but we're not. We're actually barely ever. So then they talk about something called the blind spot. And the blind spot is, they described it like the brain is designed with blind spots, both optical and psychological. And one of its cleverest tricks is to confer on its owner the comforting delusions that they don't have any. Do you guys fucking remember that book that people had as kids? And it was called Girls Are Better Than Boys, or 100 Things Girls Do Better Than Boys, or 100 Reasons Why Girls Are the Best. I can't fucking remember. And they had one for boys as well, and they were like so stupid. But like, there was this activity in the book, and it was like, stare at these 3 spots and it's going to activate your blind spot, so you'll only be able to see 2 out of the 3 spots. And it was like this trippy experience, and it was how I learned about my optical blind spot as a kid. Crazy. And I was wondering why. Why do we have these like psychological blind spots? It doesn't make sense to me. I guess evolutionary wise, you could say like, well, it develops a sense of safety and I guess self-esteem almost. Because self-esteem doesn't have to be valid. You just have to have it. Like, you could be wrong and still have good self-esteem, you know? It says the brain is filled with self-serving habits that allow ourselves to justify our own perceptions and beliefs as being accurate, realistic, and unbiased. And then they call it naive realism, which I fucking love that term. I'm going to steal it. The inescapable conviction that we perceive objects and events clearly and as they really are, and we assume that other reasonable people see things the way we do. If they disagree with us, then they obviously aren't seeing clearly. And I get why, because it's really scary to think that you're the one not seeing clearly. I would too much rather believe that it's someone else's problem. Obviously it's not though. Obviously we're wrong. One of the things I found interesting, they used a lot of political figures in their examples, like a lot. Almost every quotation that they had that wasn't from a psychologist was an example of a political leader having cognitive dissonance. And they obviously referred a lot to, I don't think it's particularly prevalent, but like people who had believed the government that they voted for and trusted, and then found out that they had been misinformed, 100% factually misinformed by their government, that the government themselves were wrong. The government held a belief and told their people the same belief. Then the government came to find out, hey, we were wrong about this. And they told their people, they told their civilization, hey, we were wrong. Here's the truth. We found out. And I can't remember the exact example. It was something to do with weaponry being held in a certain country. And the government turned around. It's a real example. The government turned around and they were like, hey guys, we were wrong. They didn't have any weapons. Even after the government had admitted that they were wrong, their devoted followers would not believe it. They wouldn't turn around and accept the fact that they had been reliably informed, hey, you were wrong. Why? Because they put their trust in these people to tell them fact number 1, which was this country has weapons, and they believed it. And then when it came to fact number 2, however many years later, and they said, hey guys, that country doesn't actually have weapons, nothing changed except the fact that they didn't want to believe them anymore. Their trust in them changed. No, because they were still trusting fact number one, which was they have weapons. So it was interesting to see that, like, it's not that they stopped trusting the people who were speaking, it's more that they weren't willing to give up a certain set of beliefs. And whether that led to hardship for them because there was such risk posed, whatever it was, whatever was hard and took a lot from them, they weren't willing to just give it up, even though they'd been handed the new facts of, like, the government was wrong. Your government, the one that you trust, and they wouldn't trust them. I find that so interesting. Anyway, they said in the book, they were like, even if that political leader had done a broadcast at the time and said, guys, I'm an idiot, you should never believe me, I'm deceiving you, I'm wrong, I'm all these things. She said that there was the possibility that this would only create more cognitive dissonance, and that the result of that would be people saying, for example, do you see how honest of a man he is? That's the kind of man we need for president. The president himself could say, I'm not fit for the role, this is a hard job, don't vote for me. And his truest supporters who have given the most energy and hardship, not even hardship, but the most potential embarrassment if they turn around and admit that they were wrong because they avidly supported so hard, will then double down and say, see how good of a leader he is because he can admit that he's a bad leader. Like, that's the kind of thing that it leads to, which is really interesting. And then there's also the idea of, like, bias confirmation, which I think all of us should be familiar with that term by now. But, like, there's a real quote from, I don't know who he is, some British lord, politics, fuckface. And he said, I will look at any additional evidence to confirm the opinion to which I have already come. A real quote. And so that's a great example of someone being fucking stupid. Ah, fuck, I accidentally opened Roblox on my computer. Game mode on. Fuck off. Not right now, love, I'm working. So anyway, I haven't finished the book, so I probably can't be of that much help. I've probably just stressed you the fuck out. Hey babe, your brain might be wrong. Hey babe, you might be wrong about everything. Just kidding, sorry, it's not funny. But I'm going to continue reading this book and I'll let you know my thoughts if I develop any more. I just thought it'd be interesting to share and discuss the first few chapters that I've been reading because I find it interesting. Anyways, before I leave you in a state of fear, personally, in an attempt to become, like I said last week, more conscious of the workings of my brain to make sure that I'm not slowly descending into being fucking stupid, I will be working on my cognitive dissonance. Do my beliefs and my behaviors match up? That's one I've been thinking about since I was about 10. Am I acting in a way that aligns with my moral beliefs? That's a pretty fucking basic one, I hope. If I think that stealing is wrong, I don't steal. If I think that murdering is wrong, I don't murder. If I think that lying is wrong, I don't lie. That's pretty basic. But then it's kind of looking a little bit deeper and being like, okay, I have a whole massive set of beliefs about myself, about why I do things, why I feel things, how entitled I am to feel those things, why other people do things, feel things, how the world is set up. And this extends into beyond, transcends politics, myself, my personal politics that I have inside my brain about myself. I have like a whole debate team up here and they all hate me. But I guess I'm expanding my awareness of how far this stuff reaches by putting language to it, because cognitive dissonance, I knew that term, but I didn't really understand what it meant. Like, I kind of knew what it meant, but not to this extent, definitely. And then I understood that it was important to align your behaviors with your beliefs as much as possible and to do all those things, but I guess I just never thought of it in such a broad context that I could have this psychological process be triggered by many different things, not just in the categories I was thinking of it in, if that makes sense. Like, it could happen at any point. It's a really scary thing to start thinking about doing because I think it requires a lot of neutrality. Like, I'm not trying to hear someone else's hot take and just immediately be like, you are right, you know? I don't want to take everyone's word to have an element of truth. I equally don't want to be closed off to it having an element of truth. And it's kind of exhausting to always be battling that in my head for some reason. Like, I guess it's a skill that's on autopilot most of the time. Like, you take a grain of salt with everything everyone ever says and you stay in your lane most of the time. And you shut up and you don't think about things all that much and you go to work. But it's like, when I get into little moments like this where I'm like, who am I as a person? How do I function? Do I have cognitive dissonance? Am I a bad person? Have I been mind controlled and I don't even know it? Which is the state I'm currently in. I'm going to start sleeping with a fucking tinfoil hat on. These are things to indulge in. These are self-work projects. They are think pieces and they are not to be dwelled on 24/7. I will not be stressing out about this stuff 24/7. And one of the ways in which I compartmentalize when I'm coming over new concepts and trying to figure out a new thing within myself and my brain is that I try and dedicate time to it so that it's not circling around in my brain all day, because it will if I don't get it out. And so what I've started doing is, and I know I talk about journaling all the time, but this isn't journaling, okay? It's writing. It's different. I've started to do these things that I've been calling them streams of consciousness. So I realized something interesting, which was I journal, right? I've talked about that a billion times and I always vouch for it. What I realized is when I journal, I was documenting my day and I was trying to paint it in a less ugly light. And that's normal when you journal. I also try and be very honest. If I had something bad happen or feel shitty, I'll say that. But I try and keep it relatively brief when I journal, like little recaps of my days, so that it's easy to do at the end of the day. I know I'm not going to forget my life, and it's less of a diving into my brain and my emotions experience and more just a documentation process. I write 10 lines, 15 lines about my life and go to bed. And so while I feel like I journal all the time and I write down all my thoughts, I'm like, I don't though. And I started to do this thing where I've been doing it in the morning before I get up for the day, where I write a stream of consciousness on paper, everything, basically what's top of mind that morning. You'd be so surprised at what comes out. And it gets all of it out of my head, because a lot of that stuff, you wouldn't believe how much it stands in the way, I think. Like, I've been so fucking stressed about this one minute detail of my life lately. Like, minute detail that I just can't figure out how to make this one thing work, that I won't explain because I don't want to, but it's like this one fucking annoying thing that's stressing me the fuck out, right? And then I started these streams of consciousness, and the amount that I wrote about it was alarming. And I became so angry while I was writing and so frustrated, and then it was out of me. And I couldn't believe how worked up I got while I was writing it, because I never feel those emotions when I'm writing in my journal. And I realized my journal never gets real emotions from me. It gets almost like a screenwrite version of my life, like I'm writing a play. It's almost written for someone to one day maybe read, which hopefully won't be the case. It feels less private, my journal. It's very private, by the way, my journal. But I'm going to come back to my journal. I'm going to read it. I'm going to remember my life. Based on this journal, do I want it to be miserable and angry? No. And so I keep some of those things out, more unintentionally than anything, but I think I definitely do. So these streams of consciousness, taking 10 minutes after you wake up to literally, you don't even take the pen off the paper. You do it with the joined up shit. And I don't do it in a nice notepad. Well, actually I have been, because I didn't have anything else, but I just today got some literally scrap paper, and you just put everything down, blurt it out, and then you rip the paper from the pad. And I've been putting it in a wallet, one of those big office-y wallet things, just to store. And I don't plan to look back over these pieces of paper. I'm going to keep them in case I ever need them or want them, but I don't plan to look over them anytime fucking soon. They're not for me to read back or to reminisce or to remember any small details. I'm not writing for anyone, not even writing for myself. I am just putting it on paper. And at first I was thinking, I'm not going to have that much to say, especially when I wake up in the morning. I'm just going to be one finger up my ass, one finger up my nose, cross-eyed, I don't know. I don't know what I'm thinking in the morning. I'm barely alive. I'm thinking my back hurts, my neck hurts, and I need to pee is what I'm thinking. I'm dreading the rest of my day, and I'm thinking about the fact that it's fucking freezing cold. I don't want to get out of bed. And then I just did it. I started just doing it and implementing it in my routine. Life-changing. And I've only been doing it for 3 days. But the amount of awareness that it gives me about how I'm truly feeling and thinking about things is incredible. And it makes me feel like I don't have to go round in my head about these things all day, because I know that I'm going to tend to them at some point. And it lets me pause, because I am a big thinker. I'm a big thought daughter, and it can get out of control and it can be unproductive, because I'm also trying to work a job. I'm trying to build a life. I'm trying to do all these things that much more grounded in the real world, that is much less sensitive to how I fucking feel. And I don't want to fucking think about how I feel all day. It's boring. It's annoying. And I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that version of myself where I'm self-obsessed and in my head and I'm too self-involved. I enjoy putting a little bit of a thicker skin on during the day. I do. I don't know if that's wrong. I do. I like it. I like being around people that make me a little bit uncomfortable, or I don't need people to tend to me emotionally during the day. I'm at work. I'm a fully functioning fucking person, and it's annoying to have those kinds of thought processes happen half-assed all day when I'm trying to think about something else. But I am a thought daughter, and I will always be thinking about these things. And so it helps to put that on rest, pause it. I know I'm going to come back to it. I know I'm going to understand more of it. I know I'm going to actively work towards becoming the person I want to become. And I don't need to do it during my work day. It's marvelous. I actually learned about those stream of consciousness papers through a book that I just started reading, which I'm going to talk way more about, but I want to just like do it. I need to read more of this book. The book gives you tasks. This is one of them, and I'm not ready to talk about it yet. Okay. But it's really interesting, and I recommend the way that the author of the other book that I'm reading lays out this stream of consciousness task is to write 3 pages in the morning before you do anything. To set your alarm earlier, get up earlier, write those 3 pages. I do it in bed. I missed this morning because, well, this morning was not a typical morning for me, so I did miss it, and it's okay to miss it, but she says that you should do it every day, and I intend to implement that as often as I can. It feels great to put it down somewhere and then like put it on paper and then put the paper down and then proceed with my morning. It sounds like it wouldn't be effective. Like it sounds like, oh yeah, like it sounds good in theory. Try it. I dare you. Try it. Do it for 7 days, bitch, and let me know what you think. Anyway, that was a weird episode. And I'm fucking freezing cold and I'm sweating because I took my ADHD meds just before filming this. Can you tell? Before you go, if you are a listener of my podcast on an audio platform like Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever the fuck else the podcast is posted, shameless self-promo, I do YouTube vlogs. And I'm really enjoying them. So if you like more, or they're not even always vlogs, they're like videos, YouTube videos. The most recent one is me converting this garage that I'm in right now to being like more of a hangout room. I had a lot of fun filming it. I also nearly fucking died because I'm stupid. And I went to meet a man in a dark alleyway to buy a TV off him at a stupid hour of the night where it was pitch black. I talk a big storm up on this podcast as if I'm some kind of smart person, and then every vlog I've ever posted is just like, is that the same bitch? Can't be. I love you guys so much. Thank you for listening to me ramble, and thank you for putting up with me being a little bit emotional earlier. I feel better for saying those things, and I love you so much. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Pretty Lonesome. I'll see you next week, same time, same place. Fuck knows what we'll be discussing next week. I'll probably read another book and then yap about my life experiences the whole time. Regularly scheduled self-indulgence. I love you guys so much. Have a good week. Mwah. Bye bye.